The local guard stepped back as Lieutenant Colonel Hayes entered the room with unmistakable authority. Her presence immediately shifted the entire dynamic, and Sarah could see uncertainty creeping into the guard's expressions. Whatever they had planned clearly hadn't accounted for a senior American military officer arriving on the scene. "I'll handle this situation from here," Hayes told the guards firmly. "This woman is under American military protection." The guards hesitated, clearly unsure of their authority in this new situation. The first guard spoke rapidly into his radio, presumably seeking guidance from his superiors. Hayes waited patiently, her stance radiating the confidence of someone accustomed to being obeyed. After several minutes of radio conversation, the guards reluctantly left the room. Hayes waited until their footsteps faded down the corridor before turning her attention fully to Sarah. "Sarah Martinez," she said, her voice softer now, but still carrying authority. "Or should I say, Sarah Mitchell, Cultural Exchange Coordinator?" Sarah's mind raced. Her cover was clearly blown, but Hayes's tone suggested this wasn't a hostile confrontation. Still, she maintained her training and kept her expression neutral. "I'm not sure what you mean, ma'am." Hayes smiled slightly, an expression that held both understanding and something else, something that looked almost like recognition mixed with an old sadness. "We can drop the pretense now. I know exactly why you're here, and I know about your mission. But, right now, we have a more immediate problem to solve." She gestured towards Sarah's outfit, the traditional Texas clothing that had supposedly triggered the security concern. Those guards weren't conducting a routine security check. Someone specifically wanted you to remove that outfit. The question is why. Sarah's training told her to remain cautious, but her instincts suggested Hayes was genuinely trying to help. "I don't understand. It's just traditional clothing representing American culture at the exchange." "Is it?" Hayes asked, stepping closer. "Turn around, Sarah." Confused but trusting her commanding officer, Sarah turned slowly. She felt Hayes's fingers gently touch the back of her outfit, tracing along the embroidered pattern that ran down the center. "This embroidery," Hayes said quietly. "Where did you get this specific pattern?" "It was my grandmother's outfit. She gave it to me before she passed away last year. She said it had been in our family for generations." Hayes was silent for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice held an emotion Sarah had never heard from her commanding officer before. "Sarah, I need you to look at me very carefully. Think back to when you were very young, maybe 3 or 4 years old. Do you remember anything unusual about your childhood? Any gaps in your memory?" The question seemed to come from nowhere, but as Sarah searched her memory, she realized there were things that had never quite made sense. Vague memories of different houses, different people who claimed to be relatives, a constant sense of moving from place to place before they settled in Texas. "I remember moving a lot when I was little. My parents said it was because of my father's work, but what? But my father was never in the military then. He didn't enlist until I was 6. Before that, he worked construction, so why would we have moved so much?" Hayes nodded slowly, as if confirming something she already knew. "Sarah, I need to tell you something that's going to be difficult to understand. That outfit you're wearing contains markings that identify you as part of a specific family. Not the Martinez family. A different family entirely." The words hit Sarah like a physical blow. "What do you mean? What are you talking about?" "The embroidery pattern on your outfit matches historical records we have of a family that was involved in resistance activities during World War II. They were part of an underground network that helped Allied forces in occupied territory." Hayes paused, studying Sarah's face carefully. "After the war, some members of that family came to America under new identities. They scattered across the country for safety, taking new names and creating new lives. Some of them had children who never knew their true heritage." Sarah felt the room spinning around her. "Are you saying that my family isn't? I'm saying that the people who raised you love you very much, but they may not be your biological parents. And that outfit you're wearing has attracted attention from people who have been searching for surviving members of that resistance family for decades." The implications crashed over Sarah like a wave. Her entire identity, everything she thought she knew about herself, was suddenly in question. But Hayes wasn't finished. "There's more, Sarah. The mark on your back. You've had it since birth, haven't you? A small birthmark shaped like a crescent moon." Sarah's eyes widened. She had indeed always had that birthmark, hidden by her clothing. Her parents had always said it was just a normal birthmark, nothing significant. How do you know about that? Because I've been looking for you for 23 years. The words hung in the air between them. Hayes reached into her uniform jacket and pulled out a small, worn photograph. She handed it to Sarah with trembling hands. The photograph showed a woman holding a baby. The woman looked remarkably like Hayes, but younger. The baby had a distinctive crescent-shaped mark visible on its back. My sister Elena was part of that resistance family. She married a man named Martinez, and they had a daughter. When the family was threatened by people seeking revenge for wartime activities, they made the impossible decision to hide their child with a loving family who could keep her safe. Sarah stared at the photograph, her hands shaking. The baby in the picture was her. The woman holding her was Hayes' sister. Elena died in a car accident when you were 5. Your father, the real Martinez, died 2 years later. But before they died, they made arrangements for you to be cared for by people they trusted completely. The people who became your adoptive parents. But why didn't anyone tell me? Because as long as you didn't know, you were safe. But when you enlisted in the military, when your name started appearing in official records, it triggered alerts. People who had been searching for surviving resistance family members finally had a lead. Hayes gestured toward the door where the guards had been. Those guards weren't working for local security. They were working for an organization that has spent decades hunting down families connected to the wartime resistance. They wanted to see the mark on your back because it would confirm your identity. Sarah felt overwhelmed by the revelation. Her entire life had been built on a foundation that was now revealed to be something completely different. What happens now? Now we make sure you're safe. Your cover here is blown, but that's not the most important thing anymore. What matters is that you understand who you really are and that you have choices about what you want to do with that information. Hayes helped Sarah adjust her outfit, carefully covering the embroidered pattern that had caused so much trouble. The family that raised you loves you as their own daughter. That doesn't change. But you also have a heritage and a legacy that connects you to something larger. Your biological parents were heroes who saved lives during the darkest period in human history. And you're my aunt. I'm your aunt. I joined the military partly hoping that someday, somehow, I might find you. When I saw your name in the recruitment files, and then saw your character and integrity in training, I suspected. But I needed to be sure. They stood together in the small room, the weight of revelation settling between them. Sarah had come to Europe on an intelligence mission, but she was leaving with knowledge that would reshape her understanding of herself and her place in the world. Will you help me understand? Will you tell me about my real parents? Hayes smiled, and for the first time, Sarah could see the family resemblance. I'll tell you everything you want to know. But first, let's get you safely out of here. We have a plane waiting to take you back to the States. As they walked through the hotel corridors together, Sarah reflected on how dramatically her life had changed in the span of a single evening. She had discovered families she never knew existed, learned about a heritage of courage and sacrifice, and found that sometimes the most important missions weren't the ones you planned for. The outfit that had almost caused her exposure had instead led her to the truth about her identity. And the commanding officer she had respected and admired turned out to be the family member who had never stopped searching for her. As they boarded the military transport plane, Hayes handed Sarah another photograph. This one showed a larger group, men, women, and children from the resistance family, smiling despite the dangers they faced. Your parents, she said, pointing to a young couple in the center of the group, would be incredibly proud of the woman you've become. Sarah studied the faces of people who shared her blood, her heritage, and her commitment to protecting others. She realized that her drive to serve, her sense of duty, and her moral compass weren't just products of good upbringing. They were legacy traits passed down through generations of people who had risked everything to do what was right. The plane lifted off into the night sky, carrying Sarah toward a future that would honor both the family who had raised her and the family she had just discovered. She was no longer just Private Sarah Martinez. She was the inheritor of a legacy of courage, and she was ready to write the next chapter of that story. Colonel Marcus Thompson was leading what appeared to be a routine training mission with his squadron of F-35 Lightning II fighters when his radar warning systems detected the approaching surveillance aircraft. As squadron commander of the 421st Fighter Squadron, he had seen countless reconnaissance flights during his 15-year career, but something about this particular situation immediately caught his attention. The F-35's advanced sensors had picked up not only Sarah's aircraft but also the 6 enemy fighters closing in on her position. Thompson's initial assessment was that they were witnessing a potentially deadly interception in progress. What concerned him most was that the surveillance aircraft appeared to be flying directly toward his squadron's position, suggesting either desperation or tactical awareness. "Lightning lead to all flights," Thompson announced through his radio. "We have a surveillance bird approaching our position with multiple hostile fighters in pursuit. Maintain formation, but prepare for possible engagement." Lieutenant Colonel Rebecca Hayes, Thompson's second-in-command, had been monitoring radio frequencies and detected the encrypted communications from Sarah's aircraft. As an experienced intelligence officer herself, she recognized the urgency in the coded transmissions and understood that they were witnessing more than a routine territorial dispute. "Colonel, that surveillance aircraft is broadcasting emergency codes," Hayes reported. "She's definitely in trouble, and those fighters behind her aren't conducting a standard intercept." Thompson faced a complex decision. His squadron was officially conducting a training exercise, and engaging enemy aircraft could escalate an already tense international situation. However, leaving a friendly aircraft to be destroyed or captured by hostile forces was equally unacceptable from both military and moral perspectives. The F-35 Lightning II aircraft under Thompson's command represented some of the most advanced fighter technology in existence. Their stealth capabilities, sophisticated radar systems, and superior weapons platforms gave them significant advantages over the older generation fighters pursuing Sarah's aircraft. More importantly, the enemy pilots had no idea that stealth fighters were operating in the area. As Sarah's aircraft drew closer to their position, Thompson made a decision that would define his career and potentially save lives. He ordered his squadron to break from their training formation and position themselves for what he termed protective intervention. "All flights, this is Lightning Lead. We're going to provide escort support for the surveillance aircraft. Maintain stealth protocols until further notice. Let's see if we can resolve this situation without firing a shot." The 6 F-35s moved into positions that would allow them to intercept the enemy fighters if necessary, while remaining invisible to enemy radar systems. Thompson's plan was to reveal their presence at the critical moment, hoping that the surprise appearance of advanced stealth fighters would convince the enemy pilots to abandon their aggressive pursuit. Sarah's aircraft was now less than 5 miles from Thompson's position when she finally spotted the distinctive profile of F-35 fighters. Her years of military experience immediately told her that these were not standard training aircraft, and their positioning suggested they were aware of her situation. "Rodriguez, are you seeing what I'm seeing?" Sarah asked her radar operator. "Yes, ma'am. Those are definitely F-35s, and they're moving into what looks like escort formation. I think they know we're in trouble." Master Sergeant Chun had been monitoring radio frequencies and, suddenly, picked up encrypted communications that confirmed her suspicions. "Captain, I'm detecting F-35 squadron communications. They're discussing protective intervention for our aircraft." For the first time since the enemy fighters had appeared, Sarah felt a surge of hope. The F-35 Lightning II was more than capable of handling the older fighters pursuing her aircraft, but, more importantly, their presence meant that highly trained American pilots were prepared to come to her aid. Thompson had positioned his aircraft so that they remained hidden from enemy radar while maintaining visual contact with both Sarah's surveillance plane and the approaching hostile fighters. He watched as the enemy formation closed to within 3 miles of the reconnaissance aircraft, clearly preparing for either forced landing procedures or direct attack. "Lightning II, what's your assessment of enemy intentions?" Thompson asked Hayes. "Sir, based on their formation and approach angle, they're definitely planning aggressive action. We need to act soon if we're going to prevent an incident." The enemy fighters had spread into attack formation, with 2 aircraft moving to force Sarah's plane down while the other 4 maintained positions to prevent escape. It was a textbook interception designed to capture or destroy a high-value intelligence asset. Thompson made his move. "All flights, break stealth. Let's introduce ourselves to our uninvited guests. 6 F-35 Lightning II fighters suddenly appeared on every radar screen in the area as they dropped their stealth protocols and revealed their positions. The enemy pilots found themselves facing not only the surveillance aircraft they had been pursuing but also 6 of the world's most advanced fighter planes. The effect was immediate and dramatic. Enemy radio chatter exploded with confused communications as pilots tried to understand how 6 stealth fighters had appeared without warning. Their carefully planned interception had suddenly become a potentially deadly confrontation with superior aircraft and pilots. Sarah watched in amazement as the F-35s moved into protective positions around her aircraft. The lead fighter pulled alongside her plane, close enough that she could see the pilot in the cockpit. Through hand signals and radio communication, the F-35 squadron established contact and began coordinating her safe passage out of the contested airspace. Surveillance aircraft, this is Lightning Lead. Thompson's voice came through Sarah's radio. We're here to provide escort support. Maintain current heading and altitude. We'll handle the visitors. The enemy fighters found themselves in an impossible situation. They had planned to intercept a single, unarmed surveillance aircraft but now faced 6 F-35s in a defensive formation. Any aggressive action would almost certainly result in their destruction, while breaking off the attack would mean abandoning their mission. Thompson understood the delicate nature of the situation. While he had overwhelming tactical superiority, any actual combat could escalate into a larger international incident. His goal was to convince the enemy pilots to withdraw without firing a shot. Unknown aircraft, this is the United States Air Force. Thompson broadcast on international emergency frequencies. You are approaching a protected surveillance operation. Alter your course immediately and return to your base. The response came in accented English from the enemy flight leader. American aircraft, you are in contested airspace. The surveillance plane must be inspected according to international law. Thompson's reply was firm but professional. Negative. The surveillance aircraft is conducting lawful operations in international airspace. You have 30 seconds to alter course before we consider your actions hostile. Sarah's crew watched the tense standoff develop around them. They were now in the center of a potentially explosive international incident, with 6 enemy fighters on one side and 6 American F-35s on the other. The outcome would depend on the decisions made by the opposing flight leaders in the next few critical minutes. The 30-second countdown that Colonel Thompson had given the enemy pilots stretched like hours in the minds of everyone involved in the aerial confrontation. Sarah maintained her steady course while watching the tactical display that showed 12 military aircraft in a tense standoff at 35,000 feet above contested territory. The enemy flight leader faced an impossible decision. His orders had been clear: intercept and force down the American surveillance aircraft at all costs. However, those orders had been issued under the assumption that the reconnaissance plane would be alone and vulnerable. The sudden appearance of 6 F-35 Lightning II fighters had completely changed the tactical situation. Lieutenant Colonel Hayes monitored enemy communications through her aircraft's sophisticated electronic warfare systems. The intercepted radio chatter revealed heated discussions between the enemy pilots and their ground controllers, who were demanding immediate action despite the overwhelming odds. Lightning Lead, I'm picking up increasing agitation in their communications, Hayes reported to Thompson. Ground control is pressuring them to complete the mission regardless of our presence. Thompson understood that desperate pilots under pressure from their commanders might make poor decisions that could escalate the situation beyond anyone's control. He needed to provide the enemy flight leader with a face-saving way to withdraw while ensuring Sarah's aircraft reached safety. As the seconds ticked down, Thompson noticed something crucial about the enemy aircraft formations. Despite their aggressive positioning, none of the fighters had activated their targeting systems or prepared weapons for immediate firing. This suggested that the pilots themselves were reluctant to engage in actual combat with the superior American fighters. Unknown flight leader, Thompson broadcast, I understand you have orders to complete your mission. However, engaging United States Air Force aircraft will result in your destruction and potentially escalate this situation beyond diplomatic resolution. I'm offering you one opportunity to withdraw with honor. The enemy pilot's response revealed the internal conflict he faced. American Colonel, we cannot abandon our mission. The surveillance aircraft must be inspected. Thompson had an idea that might resolve the standoff without bloodshed. Years of experience in international relations and military diplomacy had taught him that sometimes creative solutions could satisfy competing objectives while avoiding catastrophic outcomes. Enemy flight leader, I understand your position, Thompson replied. However, I'm authorized to inform you that this surveillance aircraft is under the protection of the 421st Fighter Squadron. Any attempt to intercept will be met with appropriate force. What Thompson did next surprised everyone involved in the confrontation. Instead of maintaining an aggressive defensive posture, he ordered his squadron to perform a precision formation flight that demonstrated their superior capabilities while providing an implicit threat that spoke louder than words. The 6 F-35s moved into a diamond formation around Sarah's aircraft, with 2 fighters positioned slightly ahead, 2 alongside, and 2 behind. The precise coordination and obvious tactical superiority of the American pilots sent a clear message about the likely outcome of any engagement. Sarah watched in amazement as the stealth fighters moved around her aircraft with incredible precision. She had witnessed many military demonstrations during her career, but nothing compared to the professional skill displayed by Thompson's squadron under such tense circumstances. The enemy pilots found themselves facing not just superior aircraft, but clearly superior pilots who could maneuver with deadly precision while maintaining perfect formation discipline. The demonstration made it clear that any combat engagement would result in their quick defeat. Master Sergeant Rodriguez continued monitoring the tactical situation, while Technical Sergeant Chun maintained navigation plots that would take them safely back to friendly airspace. Both crew members recognized that they were witnessing military professionalism at its highest level. The breakthrough came when Thompson made a decision that reflected both tactical wisdom and diplomatic sophistication. Instead of simply forcing the enemy fighters to withdraw, he offered them an alternative that would allow them to return to their base without complete mission failure. Enemy flight leader, I propose a compromise, Thompson announced. You may observe the surveillance aircraft from a distance of 5 miles while we escort it to the edge of contested airspace. This will allow you to report that you maintained visual contact with the target while avoiding an engagement that serves no one's interests. The proposal was brilliant in its simplicity. The enemy pilots could return to their base and report that they had successfully intercepted and observed the American surveillance aircraft, while Thompson's squadron could ensure Sarah's safe passage without engaging in combat. After several minutes of discussion between the enemy pilots and their ground controllers, the flight leader responded, American Colonel, we accept your proposal. We will maintain observation distance of 5 miles during escort to airspace boundary. Sarah felt relief wash over her as she realized the immediate danger had passed. The professional skill and diplomatic wisdom displayed by Colonel Thompson had transformed a potentially deadly confrontation into a manageable international incident. The next 20 minutes proceeded with remarkable precision and professionalism. The F-35 squadron maintained protective formation around Sarah's aircraft while the enemy fighters followed at the agreed distance. Both groups of pilots demonstrated exceptional skill in maintaining the delicate balance between military readiness and diplomatic restraint. As they approached the boundary of contested airspace, Thompson established direct communication with Sarah's aircraft. Surveillance aircraft, you're now entering friendly airspace. We'll maintain escort for another 10 miles to ensure your complete safety. Sarah's voice carried genuine gratitude when she responded. Lightning lead, I cannot adequately express our appreciation for your intervention today. Your squadron's professionalism and skill undoubtedly saved lives and prevented an international incident. The enemy fighters broke off their pursuit at the airspace boundary, returning to their base with the face-saving explanation that they had successfully intercepted and observed the American reconnaissance aircraft. Thompson's diplomatic solution had allowed all parties to avoid the devastating consequences of actual combat. Colonel Thompson's squadron continued escorting Sarah's aircraft for another 15 miles before receiving clearance to return to their own base. The routine training exercise had become something far more significant. demonstrating how skilled military professionals could resolve dangerous international confrontations through a combination of superior capability and diplomatic wisdom. When Sarah's aircraft finally landed at her home base 3 hours later, she was met by intelligence officers who debriefed her extensively about the encounter. The incident would eventually become a classified case study in military academies, illustrating how quick thinking, superior technology, and professional restraint could transform potential disasters into diplomatic victories. Colonel Thompson's decision to intervene had been based on split-second assessment of a developing crisis, but his handling of the subsequent confrontation reflected years of training and experience in international military operations. The 421st Fighter Squadron's actions that day would earn commendations from the highest levels of military command. The squadron emblem that had caught Sarah's attention during those critical moments bore the motto "Silent but Deadly," reflecting both the stealth capabilities of their aircraft and their commitment to protecting American interests without unnecessary escalation. That emblem had become a symbol of hope during her darkest moment in hostile skies. Years later, Sarah would often reflect on how a routine reconnaissance mission had been transformed by the professionalism and skill of fighter pilots she had never met. Colonel Thompson and his squadron had demonstrated that sometimes the most important victories are the conflicts that never escalate into actual warfare, resolved instead through superior capability and diplomatic wisdom.